Candy! John Franklin Enders was an American bacteriologist. He was born February 10, 1897 in Hartford, Connecticut. After graduating high school, he went to Yale University. 2 years into schooling at Yale, Enders left to enlist in the Naval Reserve Flying Corps as a pilot. Alright, we're... During World War I, Enders was a flight instructor in the Naval Reserve Flying Corps and became a lieutenant. After World War I, he returned to his studies at Yale and never flew a plane again. He received his bachelor's degree from Yale in 1920. After graduating from Yale, Enders went to Hartford, Connecticut and started a real estate business. He was not happy in real estate, so he went to Harvard for 4 years to study English, literature, and Germanic and Celtic languages. He chose this coursework because he wanted to become an English professor at Harvard University. During his second year at Harvard, Enders got distracted from his studies when he saw his roommate performing scientific experiments. Oh, that's so cool! Oh, yay, chemistry! As a result, he changed his major from English literature to medicine and enrolled in the doctoral program at Harvard Medical School. Enders received his PhD in bacteriology from Harvard in 1930. His thesis presented evidence that bacterial anaphylaxis and hypersensitivity of the tuberculin type are distinct phenomena. After receiving his PhD, Enders stayed at Harvard as an assistant in the Department of Bacteriology and Immunology. He became an assistant professor at Harvard in 1935. In 1939, he studied the strain of the mumps virus that led to the development of the mumps vaccine. After Pearl Harbor, Enders rejoined the Armed Forces and worked for the Armed Forces Epidemiology Board.
Declared war. The attack on Pearl Harbor united Americans as never before in history. In the explosions at Pearl Harbor, there was forged the will for complete and absolute victory.
He served as a consultant for the Department of War by developing diagnostic tests and immunizations for a variety of diseases. In 1946, Enders got his own research facility. He set up his lab at Children's Hospital in Boston. His assistants were Thomas Weller and Frederick Robbins. Together they mainly worked on measles, mumps, and chickenpox until they were hired by the National Foundation for Infantile Paralysis to do research on polio. Enders worked on polio with Jonas Salk, Thomas Francis Jr., and Albert Sabin. They began their research by putting human embryonic tissue in a test tube with a polio virus. They discovered the virus growing on the embryonic tissue. This excited the medical community since they thought the virus only grew on nervous system tissue. Because of this discovery, they could extract up to 20 specimens of the virus from an infected monkey rather than 2 or 3 they were getting out of the nervous system. Through research, Enders determined that polio killed white cells in the immune system. This research helped him develop a polio vaccine. Enders tested an early version of this vaccine on retarded and crippled children. Today, we're gathering retarded children for polio research. Hey little boy, I have some candy back in my lab. Come here.
Yay, candy!
Hey little fella, we're gonna cure polio.
No,
He's a sucker.
Candy!
Alright.
No!
Although Enders could have introduced his polio vaccine to the public, he did not because he was restricted by the National Foundation for Infantile Paralysis. In 1954, Enders, Robbins, and Weller were awarded with the Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine for their discovery of the ability of polioviruses to grow in cultures of various types of tissue. Enders began researching measles in 1953. Asian monkeys were the only non-human species that had been found to be susceptible to the virus, and they sometimes became infected and sometimes didn't, so Enders used human subjects to test the virus. Enders sent Tom Peebles, a pediatric resident, out to draw blood and collect throat swabs from kids in Boston who had measles. Using roller tube techniques, they began trying to isolate and grow virus from their samples. From 4 to 10 days after they were inoculated with the virus, the tissues began to show the abnormal cytopathic changes that indicated a virus had taken over the cells. The cells would develop multiple nuclei and become enlarged, then die. Over time, nearly all of the cells followed this path to destruction. In their third year of research, Enders discovered that the virus could not grow in chick cells. This discovery led to his creation of a vaccine, and from December of 1958 to March of 1960, he tested his vaccine on children. The vaccine gave the children a mild infection but nothing worse, and did not make them contagious. More importantly, it gave children immunity from full-fledged measles. From 1960 to 1962, the vaccine was tested on Nigerian children. Here we are in Africa, trying to catch an African. There's one.
Could use you for
Measles research.
So are we gonna tell him what we're gonna do to him?
I don't know how to say we're gonna inject you with measles in African. Enders made some minor adjustments to the vaccine, and it was licensed for commercial use in 1963. In 1954, John Enders won the Lasker Award. In 1959, he won the Time magazine Man of the Year. And in 1963, John Enders won the Presidential Medal of Freedom. Enders was given these awards for his achievements in the cultivation of measles, mumps, and polio viruses. In 1962, Enders was made a university professor, the highest honor that Harvard will bestow on one of its own faculty. He continued to work at Harvard and in his laboratory at Children's Hospital in Boston until he was 80 years old. On the evening of September 8th, 1985, John Enders died quietly at his summer home in Waterford, Connecticut, as he sat reading T.S. Eliot aloud to his wife and daughter. From when he got his laboratory until the day he died, Enders enjoyed having visitors to his house and his laboratory to have scientific discussions.